You're calling the fire department on him? Lady, that man trained half our crew. That was the first thing I heard when I stepped onto my dad's porch, drawn by the flicker of red lights and the unmistakable smell of smoked ribs still floating on the breeze. A fire truck idled at the curb, lights bouncing off the hedges like some kind of emergency cookout. And standing in the middle of it all was Karen. Pastel jumpsuit, flip-flops slapping, phone clutched like a weapon. She was pointing at my dad's smoker like it had just committed a felony. She had no idea she just tried to report Harold Simmons, a retired fire marshal, veteran of 3 departments, and a guy who literally helped write the manual on safe backyard grilling. And if you think that was the peak of her embarrassment, oh, sweetheart, that was just the first spark. It was supposed to be a normal Sunday. I'd stop by my dad's place like I always did, for some ribs, a cold drink, and a front-row seat to his over-engineered obsession with barbecue. The man treated smoking meat like a science and an art form. The smoker was custom-built, safe enough to pass NASA inspection, and always humming along like a well-oiled machine. But all it took was one shift in the wind, one wisp of hickory smoke over the fence, and suddenly Karen was at the gate with a tablet in hand, quoting HOA codes like she was reading from the Constitution. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and tell us, who's the Karen in your neighborhood? Because ours? She had no idea who she just picked a fight with. Karen didn't knock. She never knocked. Just stormed through the side gate like she owned the place. Flip-flops smacking the concrete, sunglasses the size of dinner plates, and a face like someone just insulted her lemon trees. You're in violation, she announced, holding up her tablet like it was a badge. HOA code 12A and 15C, smoke emissions, flame height, unauthorized open-fire elements. Dad didn't even look up. He was basting ribs, slow and steady, wearing the same stained apron his firehouse buddies gave him, the one that says license to grill. He blinked once. Afternoon to you too, Karen. Didn't know the HOA had new codes on good cooking. She wasn't amused. I'm serious. This entire setup is dangerous. I saw the smoke from the street. What if someone has asthma? What if it catches fire? Dad glanced at the smoker. It was humming along like it always did. Lid closed, temperature locked, smoke rolling soft and blue, not even close open flame. Karen, this setup is certified, permitted, and safer than most people's kitchens. You're welcome to read the inspection report hanging by the door. But she wasn't listening. She was already snapping photos of the grill, the yard, the house, probably planning a dramatic post for the neighborhood app. She moderates like it's the Supreme Court. Dad didn't flinch. The man had walked through burning buildings. A woman with a clipboard wasn't going to shake him. Then, in a move straight out of soap opera, she dialed 911. I watched in stunned silence as she put on a performance so theatrical, it could have won her a daytime Emmy. Elderly man, open flames, smoke hazards, possibly gas tanks. And just like that, the backyard turned into a crime scene of brisket and bad judgment. 15 minutes later, a fire truck rolled up, quiet sirens, lights flashing, no urgency. Just enough drama to draw curtains back and get neighbors peeking through their blinds. Karen stood there like a hero waiting for her medal, still clutching her phone and practically vibrating with self-importance. And then the moment hit. Out stepped 3 firefighters. No rush, no panic. All off duty, wearing casual gear and very familiar smiles. The lead guy took one look at my dad and broke into a grin. Marshal Simmons? You grilling without inviting us again. Karen's jaw dropped. My dad laughed, wiped his hands on his apron, and pointed at the smoker. Ribs. Hickory wood. Ready in 20. The younger firefighter behind the lead elbowed his buddy. You believe this? He trained half the station. Karen blinked, like her brain was buffering. Wait, you know him? Know him? The lead firefighter chuckled. Lady, this man taught us everything we know. He's the reason we don't burn half the suburb down every summer. Her face flushed red so fast it was almost impressive, but she still wasn't giving up. I told the dispatcher there were gas tanks, and there's smoke. I smelled it. It's a public hazard. One of the firefighters was already chewing on a rib. "Ma'am, it's delicious." The lead turned to her, serious for the first time. "Also, just so you're aware, misusing emergency services, that's a real offense. And this doesn't even come close to a violation." Karen sputtered something that sounded like a car refusing to start. She looked down at her tablet like it had betrayed her, then back at the smoker, still puffing away peacefully. By now, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered, watching the scene unfold like free entertainment. Karen had tried to light a fire. Instead, she lit up her own reputation. Most people, after calling the fire department and getting politely dunked in public, would have slunk away, maybe issued a sheepish apology, maybe baked brownies to save face. But Karen doubled down like she was holding a royal flush, while the whole table could see her cards were blank. Less than 24 hours after the brisket emergency, Dad got an email from the HOA. Subject line, urgent. Unauthorized pyrotechnic activity, community disciplinary session. I had to reread it twice because it sounded like a spy thriller crossed with a grill manual. It was signed by Karen, of course, who'd appointed herself HOA president after the last one moved away, and no one else bothered to run. Dad sipped his coffee and raised an eyebrow. "Looks like I'm being summoned to the barbecue inquisition." We showed up to community clubhouse, expecting a tense chat. Instead, it looked like a mock trial, long table, microphones, nameplates. Karen sat at the center, like Judge Judy, in a tracksuit. Flanking her were two board members, Marcia, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, and Frank, a clipboard enthusiast with a deep love of fine print. Neighbors filled the seats like it was theater night. Someone in the back actually had popcorn. Karen tapped the mic dramatically. "This meeting is to address a violation of HOA Clause 7 concerning open flame usage during elevated fire risk," she declared. Dad smiled. "This about my smoker or my seasoning?" Karen wasn't amused. She launched into a rant, charts, smoke plume theories, even a 6th grade style air quality diagram. It was impressive in the way a toddler's crayon drawing is impressive for enthusiasm, not accuracy. Then Dad pulled out his folder. Permits, fire chief endorsements, inspection reports. All legal, signed, sealed. The air in the room shifted. Because suddenly, it wasn't Dad on trial. It was her. Karen didn't back down. Not even when the fire permits were laid out like evidence in a courtroom drama. Not when Marshall leaned over to whisper something that made Frank sit straighter and stop fiddling with his laminated rule book. No, Karen just dug in deeper. "This isn't about technicalities," she snapped. "It's about community respect. And frankly, your smoker is a nuisance. It's disruptive. It smells. Like ribs," someone shouted from the back. Laughter rippled through the room. Karen's eye twitched. This is a serious meeting. Dad just leaned forward, calm as ever. "Karen, you called the fire department on a retired fire marshal because of some barbecue smoke. Then you try to frame it as pyro activity. This isn't about rules. This is about ego." For a second, the room went still. Then Marcia, quiet, polite Marcia, spoke up. "I'm sorry, Karen, but I've lived across from Harold for 12 years. That smoker is safer than most kitchens. And the ribs," she smiled, "they're legendary." That's when the room flipped. One neighbor stood and clapped. Another called out, "Best brisket in 3 counties." Even Frank looked nervous, adjusting his collar like he just realized he'd backed the wrong horse. Karen slammed her gavel down, so hard it bounced and clattered to the floor. "Fine," she barked. Then, effective immediately, the HOA will issue a temporary ban on all outdoor grilling, pending further review. You could feel the outrage before you heard it. Someone shouted, "What about birthdays? July 4th? You're gonna call SWAT on a birthday candle, Karen." And just like that, the match was lit. By sunset, flyers have been dropped on every doorstep. Woodrow Community Grill Ban. Violations will be penalized. By nightfall, grills lit up like protest torches. Ribs, brisket, burgers, marshmallows, a full-on smoke rebellion. And Karen? She had no idea what she just started. By the next evening, It was war. Not loud, not violent, just a slow-burning kind of war, where every backyard became a battlefield of defiance. Smokers rolled out of garages like tanks. Patio grills were scrubbed, polished, and fired up with righteous purpose. People didn't just cook, they put on shows. Moms were flame-searing kebabs. Toddlers handed out cornbread muffins. And the quiet guy from 2 houses down, he lit a fire pit and roasted esmores with his grandkids, all while blasting Motown across the lawn. Karen came outside 3 separate times. First with a camera, then with a clipboard. Last time, just with pure fury. Nobody flinched. Someone handed her a hot dog just to mess with her. She called the police again. Claimed toxic fumes, unauthorized open flames, risk of property damage. The officer rolled up, window down, looked around, then gave her a polite shrug. Ma'am, unless there's an actual fire, we recommend not misusing emergency lines. Karen shouted something about liability and legal exposure. The cop drove off before she finished her sentence. Dad and I sat on the porch, sipping iced tea, the sweet scent of mesquite floating in the air like victory smoke. She's unraveling, I muttered. He nodded. She's not built for resistance. She's built for control. And now no one's listening. That's when we heard it. A neighbor down the block, singing Smoke on the Water while flipping burgers. Someone else shouted, "Freedom tastes like brisket." Laughter rolled down the street like a wave. Karen had ruled this neighborhood with threats and HOA notices for years. But nothing rattled her like people laughing, people bonding, people ignoring her. She hadn't just lost power. She'd lost a room. And she wasn't done yet. She was about to get desperate. It was almost midnight when the motion sensor light near the smoker flicked on. Dad didn't even flinch, just paused mid-rub on a rack of ribs and said, "Check the monitor, will you?" I walked over to the little screen mounted by the door. For camera angles, one shadowy figure, hood up, gloves on, crouched low by the side gate, and unmistakably, "Karen," I whispered, "is that her?" She was tugging at something, the cable that powered the internal fan system. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out a lighter. "She's not serious." I started, but Dad was already moving. We stepped outside calmly. No yelling, no panic. We came around the corner, and she froze, caught mid-unplug, half her face lit by the porch spotlight. Her hair was falling out of the bun. The lighter dangled from her hand like guilt made visible. "I was checking for a gas leak," she said. "At midnight? With a lighter?" Dad replied, his voice like gravel soaked in calm. She tried to save face. "I smelled something strange, figured the unit was malfunctioning. I had my phone out, recording." She hadn't noticed. Dad didn't need to raise his voice. He just gave her that quiet, disappointed stare that said more than a lecture ever could. "Karen," he said, "you trespassed. You tampered with my property. You put yourself in my house, in danger. You're lucky the suppression fan kicked in, or we'd have a real fire." She stammered something about community safety. He called the non-emergency line. When the responding officer arrived and saw the footage, he didn't ask questions. He asked Dad, "Would you like to file a report?" Dad didn't hesitate this time. "Yes." Karen blinked, stunned. For once, the woman had nothing to say. The next morning, the neighborhood woke up to the juiciest news since someone's golden retriever stole a wedding cake during last year's block party. Karen, the queen of citations, the master of HOA memos, had been formally cited by police for trespassing and property tampering. Word spread fast. Someone printed out a freeze frame from the security footage and taped it to the bulletin board with a sticky note that read, "Grill tampering Karen. Considered well done." By lunchtime, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. But this time, Karen wasn't presiding. She was suspended, pending her court date. Frank tried to defend her, again, until Dad quietly reminded him, "Frank, I was the one who approved your fire pit permit in 2018. Remember that leak in the connection line." Frank shut up real fast. With Karen gone and most of the board finally willing to breathe without her looming over them, things started shifting. Marcia, bless her, stepped in as acting president and called for return to sanity. No more bans, no more drama, just common sense and courtesy. The crowd clapped. Later that week, Dad got a call from the county fire chief. "Heard about the incident," he said. "Honestly, Harold, you handled it with more patience than I would have." They offered him a part-time seat on the Fire Safety Advisory Board. Again, Dad laughed, "Only if it doesn't interfere with brisket." I uploaded the clip of Karen sneaking around the smoker to Reddit, captioned it, "Karen tried to sabotage my dad's grill at midnight. Didn't know he was a retired fire marshal." It went viral in hours. Memes, dramatic edits. One guy added opera music and called it The Smoke Rebellion, a barbecue opera. Karen? She went quiet. Porch dark. Curtains drawn. But even then, I knew she wasn't finished. She was regrouping. And what she did next, she'd regret it for the rest of her life. She was quiet for 3 days. That's how long it took for the humiliation to curdle into something worse. And then it started. First came the flyers, glossy, over-designed handouts slipped under every door. Concerned citizens for safe suburban living. Sounded official. Sounded harmless. But the contact email? Suspiciously familiar. And the list of demands? Ban on charcoal. Ban on spice-heavy cooking. Ban on firewood stacking. Ban on scented candles over 4 ounces. Karen was back. But this time, she wasn't trying to reclaim her HOA throne. She was trying to start her own parallel regime. A shadow government of passive-aggressive leaflets and forged authority. It might have been laughable if it hadn't started working. Some of the quieter neighbors, the ones who hadn't seen the grill rebellion unfold, began to ask questions. What if she's right? What if the smoke is a health risk? Confusion set in. And confusion, Karen knew, was her best friend. But Dad had seen this kind of slow creep before. He said it reminded him of a backdraft. Quiet, invisible, until it explodes. So he made a plan. He called Marcia, then the local fire department. Then, this part one didn't even see coming, the mayor's office. The response? A full-blown neighborhood cookout, officially permitted, fully staffed by fire safety officers, and hosted by none other than Harold Simmons. It was brilliant. The cookout rolled out like a peace march with brisket. Firefighters handed out safety brochures. Kids got plastic helmets and grilled cheese. Every neighbor showed up. Every grill fired. And every smoky bite was a reminder that safety and community could live on the same plate. Karen showed up too, clipboard in hand, ready to argue. But then she saw the mayor, eating cornbread, laughing with Dad. Karen froze. And for the first time since all this began, she backed away. Karen didn't go out with a bang. She slipped away in the middle of a Tuesday morning. Moving truck idling at the curb, blinds still drawn. No farewell. No apology. Not even one last memo. Just a for sale sign stuck crooked in her front yard, and a porch light that never turned on again. We all watched from behind curtains and screen doors, sipping coffee and pretending we weren't watching. Someone played Another One Bites the Dust through a Bluetooth speaker. Someone else clapped. Quiet, satisfied, like the final note of a long, off-key song finally fading out. And just like that, peace. The HOA? Marcia kept things grounded. Fair rules. Open votes. Actual neighborly behavior. No more surprise bans. No more weird flyers. Just community the way it's supposed to be. Dad, now officially back on the county's fire advisory board, still hosted grill nights twice a month. They turned into mini block parties. Kids running around with ketchup-stained cheeks. Dads comparing smoker mods. Moms trading dry rub recipes like state secrets. And Karen? She became a cautionary tale. A whisper at neighborhood meetings. A meme in the group chat. A reminder that power without purpose just burns everyone around it. One night, as the smoke curled soft over the fence and Motown hummed from a nearby patio, I sat beside Dad on the porch. Same folding chair. Same glass of iced tea in his hand. I asked him how he stayed so calm through it all. He didn't answer right away. Just looked out at the street, where neighbors were laughing and the world felt right size again. You can't put out every spark, he said, finally, but you can choose what kind of flame you spread. He took a slow sip of tea, the kind of sip that means story over. And just like that, it was